Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Crumb Bum Deluxe. It's your boy Crumb here. Today I'm going to talk about Masters of the Universe. Initially, I did not give too much of a crap about this film, necessarily. As a kid, I'm sure I had some of those toys, but it was never a big property for me. I was Star Wars, later X-Men, Ninja Turtles, pretty much all Ninja Turtles. I'm sure I had some He-Man, but I never kept up with the lore, and in terms of my fandom, it was not a big part of my childhood, I will say. It was big enough, though. Everybody knew He-Man. So going into this film, I don't know, I guess I had low expectations. Not really super low. It really, from the trailers, the look of it looked really good. I had joked a number of times that it was actually Guardians number 4, as and after the fact, I think a lot of that Guardians of the Galaxy flavor is kind of being strip mined now for all of Hollywood to use and abuse. But overall, by the end of it, I gotta say, I enjoyed it for what it was, for what it is, for the most part. However, it is pretty stupid. It's a pretty dumb movie. I think it has a serviceable story and set of characters for the most part. I think they wasted time and energy on having any of it set on Earth. I don't see why it couldn't have just been on Eternia to begin with, and let's, just like the cartoon, throw us into their world. It's not Sonic the Hedgehog, and Sonic the Hedgehog didn't need that. There's no reason to bring these characters directly into our world, for the most part, I would say. Especially in this case, there wasn't really a reason other than him being saved by his parents to come back and fight another day. Okay, I get that, but they could easily have sent him to another kingdom, another land somewhere. They could have had it so Man-at-Arms took Adam and they escaped to some exiled area where he grew up, and you could have had this whole thing where Man-at-Arms helped raise Adam and this, that, or the other. Actually, the script is really not great at all. For me, I'll tell you the things I liked right away, straight up. I thought the special effects were good. I thought they looked good. I think there's some really iconic imagery in this movie as well. There's a really great image of Skeletor looking down with his eyes glowing and the shadow creeping over his face, and there's some really great images. I think it wasn't for lack of trying. I think there was a huge missteps in the writing. There was no reason to keep Battle Cat out of the story at all, but the costumes were great. The look of it was good. I think it was really more than satisfactory version of character designs compared to the 80s version with Dolph Lundgren, and in reference to its source material, I think they were really great costumes. I thought what's his name, Triclops, the sniper character with the cool, you know him from the toys and everything. Triclops is his name, but he looked awesome. All the monsters looked really cool. I thought Animal Man looked great. Pretty much across the board, the look of things was spot on. The sets, the background pieces, the environments, they were all great. Eternia looked beautiful. The spaceship designs were horseshit, I'll tell you that much. All the spaceships in the movie, the craft that they were flying, those were some of the lamest designs I think I've ever seen in a movie of this caliber, So it was like they kind of knew what they had in their hands, and they were able to recognize what made it cool and good and interesting to the fandom. I think also the dumb Hollywood shit kind of crept in there as well and overtook. The humor in this film is absolute, booty. It's terrible. Pretty much most of the jokes don't land. The ones that you do hear chuckles from are kind of like a nervous reaction to just awkward, strange, back in the day, at least as far as millennials and stuff remember, our Kids Entertainment had jokes in the episodes that, as kids we didn't get because they were adult kind of jokes, but they're very cleverly written into the scripts. We just didn't notice them. And then as we get older, you could even go to something like Rugrats and see that there's, you know, some great adult humor that's been baked in to the subtext, and this was not it in Masters of the Universe. It's very in your face. It's trying to hang its hat on the merit of being self-aware, but after a while it's like way too self-aware. It wants you to laugh whether you like it or not. And, you know, that's where Jared Leto comes in, really. I enjoyed his Skeletor, but I've heard a lot of gripes, especially between friends, about this character. And, you know, you could have probably cast any other kind of eccentric actor, but at the same time, I didn't mind it. You know, I think the problems with the character there would maybe be in the writing, but I liked his voice. I liked his laugh and kind of his approach to the character, which I thought was interesting. But, you know, he's also a mimbo, Jared Leto, so anything he thinks outside of, you know, his performance is null and void as far as I'm concerned. But the main dude who played Adam, I forgot his name, he's great. He's awesome. He carried the film nicely, and sold all the stupid dialogue and exposition very well, you know, as well as he could. I really love Idris Elba's performance as Man-at-Arms. I wish the script was better, so his dialogue and everything was much better, so it was actually worth using him. But at the end of the day, I think he really latched on to an aspect of that character that I found really professional. I felt like this guy, like, he ain't gonna be a slouch in any role, you know, because you could be on that set easily with all the green screen and everything and just be like, man, this is ridiculous. I feel like Idris Elba was like, you know what, this is my take on Man-at-Arms. This is how I'm going to do Man-at-Arms. He probably even went back and watched episodes of the cartoon and pulled stuff that we're not even really noticing that he used for that character. But I felt like that cantankerous nature of his, and also his sense of humor, was really good. He didn't necessarily have to be a drunkard or anything like that the whole time, and they kind of had a little narrative thread there that they didn't do anything with. Possibly he should have poured it out on screen so we as the audience see him make that choice, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, I thought it was a pretty fun summer blockbuster. It feels a little long at times. The editing is real kind of choppy, and there are moments where you're, you know, any moment in a movie where you're conscious of like your seat being not very comfortable, or you're like kind of looking around at things, you know that the movie is not doing its job very well. Between where the editing was, where the writing was, and ultimately how to tell this story they're trying to tell, I think it just kind of got muddled up in some of these really terrible dialogue moments and really awful jokes. You know, you're just kind of like, all right, get me to the next action thing, because those were fun. You know, I thought overall the characters looked the way they needed to. The effects were probably also AI tooled to get them to a level of fidelity that is pretty impressive. You know, I think it's weird. I have a lot of gripes about AI at the moment. I mean, not too many. My backgrounds are AI. But, you know, some of this AI tooling for special effects I'm not totally opposed to, because I think as far as blockbusters and big corporate movies that, you know, I'm kind of the first person against all this corporate mentalities, damn corpos. But, you know, at the end of the day, that is where we go for our Star Wars, our Marvel, you know, these big franchises and these roller coaster type blockbusters that, you know, on a good day, you get a Jurassic Park, you know, on a bad day, you get, you know, God, what could even come to mind? Battlefield Earth. And on a pretty decent day, if the weather's nice, you get a Masters of the Universe. So if they do get a sequel, I hope they learn from what the fandom has to say about it, because I think even a lot of the Gen X fandom that were probably into it back in the day, I don't know for sure, but it's not true to what they know, and probably doesn't reflect the experience they had in their childhood outside of the visuals. And probably any Gen Xer will tell you leaving Battle Cat out of the mix for the whole movie is a huge mistake. Same thing with Orko. You know, the time they spent on Earth establishing that bullshit, and the horrible roommate actor. I hope this actor never gets work again. He's awful. He's terrible. Hey, he might be a brilliant Shakespearean actor, but the director fucked up. Somebody fucked up, but that guy cut him out of the streaming release. The Roommate, terrible. Any of that Earth shit, terrible. You could have spent that time Battle Cat in a battle sequence and Orko doing some goofy shit on Eternia. So, but, you know, with all that being said and weighing all the pros and cons of the experience, I do got to say I did have fun. I took my mother to the film. She liked it. So perhaps that's skewing my bias a little bit, but, you know, it was a good time besides that. So I think out of 5 crumbs, we're going to go ahead and give it 3 solid crumbs. That's just like good, you know, it was good, serviceable, satisfactory as far as I'm concerned, not being a huge part of the fandom. But, you know, 2026 summertime films have been awesome, have been fun. We're doing good. We're, you know, I mean, it's subjective, honestly, but I didn't hate Masters of the Universe, and I didn't hate Mandalorian and Grogu. All, you know, and I think the fandom has very valid complaints about both. But as it stands, this summer has been quite fun at the movies, and I only expect it to continue to go that direction. So I don't know what I have up next, but I'll be sure to share it along.